Dr. David Rosie come to me only recently with a sad story. Didn't pay attention, I didn't want to hear, because I done said and done and I'm finding me own affair. But when he tell me the doctor gone back in power on the 5th of October, in the grave I started to shiver. But when he tell me Mr. Desmond agreed to all of the doctor plans, so I come tonight to tell Desmond where you wrong. Look, I hear you fight the election as a clean and decent man. Desi, you're wrong. Desi, you're wrong. And the Jacobs left the commission to the college coyote plan. Desi, you're wrong. Desi, you're wrong. But as president of the land, you failed to set up a battle plan. That is why you're gone. Desi, you're gone. Want to be a veteran in politics, you gotta be smart and have plenty tricks. Never put all your confidence in your fellow man, especially when you're fighting an election. I hear they say that the doctor tell you to bring up Zorba, and so from America you bring Mr. Carter. But listen, brother Debbie, you should have never ever agree. You could have come and let me advise you properly. The observers from overseas, you bring to scrutinize Guyanese. They say you're wrong. They say you're wrong. Anyway, they send Mr. Carter, the opposition take over. They say you're wrong. They say you're wrong. But as president of the land, you fail to set up a battle plan. That is why you're gone. Yes, you're gone. There we go. Years, you know I used to sanction to everyone throughout the Caribbean. If a leader wants to stay in position, he must never think for the free and fair election. We know that the doctor wanted to get in power, did everything in favor, confusing the leader election. They went presidency. Instead of voting for PNC, he's so confused that he voted for the PPP. I heard the ballot had to be counting at the place of poll in the evening. Desi, you're wrong. Desi, you're wrong. On the night before the election, the list was still in confusion. Desi, you're wrong. Desi, you're wrong. One of the presidents of the land, you failed to set up a battle plan. That is why you're gone. Desi, you're gone. Alive? Morgan, for all his patience, grit and determination. For 28 long years he waited patiently to rise again and defeat the PNC. He captured presidency, applied the pressure on heat, embarrassed the PNC, then demolished presidency. If only now does he know his fate from all them chances he take. Well, it's now does he get to learn from his own mistake. Teddy is president of the land, so no use to fret and frown. Desi, you're wrong. Desi, you're wrong. The man is a true born politician. That is why he win the election. Desi, you're wrong. Desi, you're wrong. But as former president of the land, I say let the function and carry on. Desi is going back to the mausoleum. You're wrong.
Oh, yes. One of the great calypsos that came out of Guyana. Desi, you're wrong. A little bit of history there. 1992 election, October 5th, just finished. One of the great calypsos, the Mighty Rebel, one of the great calypsonians that we have produced, and that was a well-crafted calypso, really dealing with the complexities of electoral politics in Guyana and highlighting a moment in our history that many may have forgotten by now. It was 31 years ago. My God, more than 2/3 of our population was even born then. Desi, you're wrong. Really, doing everything. Burnham giving advice on how you deal with power. Desmond Hoyt seen as a novice when it comes to power. Chetty Jagan, the epitome of patience and tenacity. And you can tell from the reaction of the audience, they were giving him money and so on, that they recognize the profundity of the calypso. The Mighty Rebel, that was his first calypso crown that year, 1993. Prior to that, he was singing the same kind of calypsos, but he would play second until 1993. Desi, you're wrong. Desi, you're wrong. Tonight, we continue our coverage of the issues in the news. There are always issues in the news. We come tonight, there is still war. There is still war in the Middle East. The death toll continues to rise. And I thank all of you who sent notes to me, thanking us for drawing to your attention that Guyana, our little piece of land, could have been Israel. We could have been the neighbors of Israel. We could have been the Palestinians. When Guyana was offered to the Jews to set up their country, they weren't too enthusiastic. They wanted to set up where they think it was the biblical homeland, Jerusalem. But a lot of Guyanese, from what I'm gathering, uh, don't know that piece of our history, because it is part of our history. We could have been the place where the Israelis set up their homeland. Good evening to all of you. Good evening to my friend Orrin Newton, the Turkey, the Turkey, not the Sultan of Turkey, the Turkey from Buxton. Good evening to all of you. Those of you who are joining us from outside of Guyana, those of you who are joining us from North America, from Europe. It's war. What Singing Sandra said last night in that calypso that I played, so long as greed and envy lie in the hearts of man, there will always be war. But at the end of the day, nobody wins a war. So we have two wars now, and the hot one is there in the Middle East. If you're praying, people, just let us pray for all those innocent people who always get caught in the net whenever there's war. Our guest tonight is Dr. Henry Jeffrey. You all have been saying that you all haven't heard from him in a long time. Not his fault, scheduling issues, but he's here tonight. Let's bring him in. Dr. Jeffrey, good evening.
Good evening, David, and good evening to your audience. Yes, we have been missing each other as we go on, because we had things to do and places to go. But here we are tonight. Yeah.
Yes. And we come tonight. There, war is raging there in the Middle East. The Palestinians and the Israelis. Last night, I told our audience of that almost. Israel was offered part of Guyana to set up their homeland. Many of our countrymen and women were not aware of that little tidbit. Why do you think that we never really made a big deal of it in Guyana?
Because the Israeli never took it seriously. I mean, that's right. I mean, they were more interested in being in the homeland, somewhere that they had some sort of lineage to. And therefore, this was just something that happened, that it was offered, and I doubt if it was ever taken serious by them, given their whole historical thing about Israel, Jerusalem, and all of that. So maybe that's why it was never made much.
Yeah, as you look at what's happening there, and war is war, and it takes two to go to war. But when you think of the conditions under which people live there in that Gaza Strip, and do you think that we are ever going to solve that problem until we really solve the real serious problem of the Palestinians being displaced from where they were and packed into that little space there? They're saying that it's perhaps the most cramped place in the world, 2.2 million and more living in just a few square miles.
Yeah, well, it's that the proposal for a two-state still, but it's not unlike what's happening here in Guyana. You have one ethnic group trying to suppress the other one and to try to keep it out of power. And remember, you can understand the Israelis' position in a sense that their history. I mean, since the 13th century, people carrying them out in boats and promising them in England. My history serves me right. and promising them land and drowning all of them in the sea and all that thing. So they want a homeland of their own to feel security, to feel secure about. The problem is that the Palestinians want a home of their own, but they both hold some sort of belief that this land that they both want belongs to one or the other. So they can't live together because the Jewish want a Jewish state. The constitutional change they made the other day almost made that quite clear. There's going to be a Jewish state. And the Palestinians want a Palestinian state. Now, the question is, the Jews always feel that the Palestinians, the second state, the other state that you set up for the Palestinians, would always be a threat to them if it comes to fruition in some kind of a way, in that way. So effectively, you have that quarrel there. It's like bicommunalism all again together. Here you have, in Guyana, you have the PPP, Indian party, PNC, African parties for the most part, and they don't want to cooperate in government because I'm not certain I can say not only the PPP, the PNC had their opportunity a few years ago, and they did not. They promised things that they never did. And therefore, they don't want to cooperate with each other, but they are hustling to win elections so that the other can rule the other. And they don't care if they win it by one seat. So if you win an election by one seat, you think you can do anything to the other group because you're an ethnic party. You're ruled by ethnic people, by people of your ethnicity. Indeed, it's well, I used to say it's a oligarchy. It's almost no one-man show on one side. So effectively, that's what you have. And that's why we got this quarrel. We have had quarrel for 70 years too. This quarrel has been going on. The Americans know quite clearly what's the answer here. We told you a year ago in the State Department report, gentlemen or ladies and gentlemen of Guyana, you have to give up this kind of British system that you have, this winner-takes-all system, because even if you can win by one vote, you have no justification to be ruling people in that kind of a British way. And it allows you to do it. The things the PPP are doing, I'm not talking to the opposition and make all this. I suppose somebody can say, let's go to court and see if that is right. But effectively, you want to be in court. The judiciary going to run the country now. So effectively, those things are wrong, but they're doing it, and it's not particularly illegal. So that is the central situation here. And if you get to office with a one-seat majority, one-person majority as a vote, you can almost do the same thing. They'll say, look, and they're saying it, 1 to 7,000 sugar workers. You know, they're always praying on that. You do that. Indeed, you set up all sort of commission to look at the sugar industry and do all sort of things, and then you just throw the commission and everybody aside and say that you are reforming sugar and you got to reform it radically. You know, so you the truth is that the Americans are right. They know what's going on here. They're totally correct. You have to put in place mechanisms in ethnic societies to prevent it, to prevent people from operating as if they are in a homogeneous society. So,
and yes.
Yeah, go on.
You mentioned the Americans, and 2 weeks ago, well, just over a week and a half ago, there was this conference in Washington organized by Rickford Burke, and it was attended by the top brass of the PNC, the leader, those who may challenge the present leader were there, the general secretary was there. So top brass of the PNC, the top brass of the AFC was there, and I attended, so one can say the WPA was there too.
Top
And
brass.
and there were two meetings with
Yeah.
the Congressional Black Caucus. And then there was a kind of frenzied response by the government, trying to delegitimize the meeting and to say that the conference was a fake, etc., etc. But the frenzy by the government gave away its concern with the opposition meeting the sections of the American government, but in particular the Black Caucus. What did you make of the meeting and the response of the government?
Well, I think as I said in my little article last week, that the meeting was a success before the people left here. Largely because I believe that the central issue here, you don't want to talk to your own people. You don't want to talk to your opposition. You are closing down committee. Well, the opposition and civil society are an important part of governance in a democratic society. And that is the point I believe they were trying to make to the peers. You don't want to talk to them, but we will invite. I can remember how deliberate Jeffrey says the opposition will be coming to Washington, just like you have come. They are as important as you, as the democratic process. And that is what brought them there. You think the Americans don't know what's going on? They can tell you need chair government. They can tell you who was installed and who wasn't installed. They know who voted in Guyana when they were at the job in America. They turn up to work in America and they've got voted. You think they don't know? No, it's not the facts of the matter. It's not the facts of the matter. As I said then too, that effectively they have a long historical thing here. They have people every day only studying Guyana or Guyana, a few other countries, because there's not so much going on here to keep maybe 2 or 3. But the point is, and so they know what's going on. That's why they can recommend to you what you should do. That's why, and this recommendation have been there for decades. And so I saw it as an important gesture to demonstrate to the PPP that, hey, these people are important to any democratic system that you have. And therefore, your attempt to do whatsoever you're doing cannot mean that you can determine that you're not going to hold this, you're not going to talk to that. It is your democratic duty to talk. And therefore, I believe that. And secondly, I believe that, because I don't believe that they're going there for facts. They know the fact. The second duty, I think they wanted to listen to the people there in Ghana. What are you talking about? How you see the future? Where is Guyana going? And I think that might have been disappointing to them. My own feeling, I think it might have been disappointing. I don't know how all of that has taken place, but I wasn't there. But I think that I can see clear statements as to the election process, and that the European Union has it in the report. The CARICOM group says that we must have a new list and all of that. The European Union says that these things must be done. Instead of that, the PPP seem to be doing other things. If I'm right, because it seems like the rules that they have passed now, that you don't even, all you need to show is some ID and they can register you with somebody. So anyway, the PPP wants to stay in government and will do anything to stay in government. It's has been manipulating elections. It's going to continue wanting to do so. It is as simple as that. I mean, so effectively, they were waiting. I think they want to hear where these people here who are the opposition, as they themselves call themselves, government in waiting, what are they doing? And I have heard nothing particularly exciting about this, because what they think is that they can win. But as I said, I titled my article this week, "What if you lose?" What if you lose? Where's your constituency? Where have you left your constituency? You lost, the PPP wins, however you win or however you lost. And the result is that they can continue doing all they are doing, trying to force your constituent in all manner of ways to go and vote for them. Trying is either that, join the fold, or immigrate. And that is the game plan. It has happened in Fiji, but that in that case it was the Indians that left instead of the natives. So effectively, I believe that I've not seen anything there to say. Clearly, there are some rules in place. I heard the trade union saying that, first of all, that there must be veto on certain issues, like the budget and all of that. I heard AGDA coming out and saying that they want shared governance. Well, that would be the ultimate and perhaps the best, because that was on the table to Jagan since the 1950s. But I mean, certainly there must be some, in an ethnic society such as ours, certainly you need something to protect ethnic groups. I mean, you have it in Suriname. You don't put it clearly like it's protected in group, but you can't be a president of Suriname if you don't get 2/3 majority of the parliamentary vote. So effectively, you can say what's his name is the president, but he can't move. He's got to watch his step. He can't do what the slotted are doing, and doing quite legally. I mean, and around the world, there are numerous forms of vetoes that people can use to protect that they can, and that is acceptable in democratic theory. After all, look, Northern Ireland, that Clinton and Bush, or Clinton and Biden. Biden indeed was important.
Yes, Biden. Yes,
enforcing that thing about Clinton. So Clinton and Biden and saying, and I saw Clinton invited Orphan to speak to his group he has there with young people and so on. And it's good. I said maybe you should talk to him and put some sense into him, because what they're doing is foolishness. This is going to continue forever and ever and ever, and might end up, well, we have had our traumas too. We are talking about Israel. We have had traumas, and it comes and it goes, and it is still there. So effectively, yes, I think that I missed somebody putting on the table clearly notions that no race, no one group should be able to behave like if they are a government of homogeneous society. They can do anything, and then people got to live with it, because there's no, all these things you can talk about here, all these things that you want to talk, Washington, X, or whatsoever, these are not going to lose PPP any vote in terms of ethnic votes. When they want to manipulate the election, they should back up, because a lot of their own people are leaving. But then it's not going to lose. Look what they tried in terms of PNC vote. They do everything, maybe do everything with the public purse to try to win the local government election, particularly in the urban areas. It's hard. These are bicommunal societies. Not going to happen. And people telling them that since the 60s. But it's hard. People are latched into this system. So you need some kind of...
one of the consequences of all of this is the way in which we have an autocratic form of governance within the context of a formal democracy. And you have been writing and speaking about it a lot. And recently, one of the hired pens of the PPP decided that he was going to take you on this notion of Guyana being an autocracy. Tell our viewers um, how how is it? I mean, part of your answer obviously has been what we've been talking about here this evening. But this whole question of a quote unquote democracy, but you have a kind of autocracy operating within this democratic polity. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, who was it? Quentin Hogg, I think, Lord Hailsham. Was he a Lord? I think it was him. I can't remember these things. That says the Westminster system is essentially electoral dictatorship. Once you win the election, no matter by one vote, and indeed you win by plurality. You don't. Our constitution, you must get more than 51%, but you can win by plurality. Margaret Thatcher won most of her election by plurality. Well, most of them by pluralities. That means you're getting less than 50%, but you got the government. Once you get that, you can almost do anything. Parliament almost become just because of how it operates. Parliament have the ministers, the same ministers of the government and everything there. And therefore, the government controls the parliament. The result is that you can become an autocrat. You can easily become an autocrat. And when you, even we see it a little bit with Boris Johnson, what he was trying and so, but even in a homogeneous society, what you have is a government that can almost do anything non-stop until you take them to court or throw them out of elections. But in a homogeneous society, people change their minds. You have large swaths of people say, well, you are wrong, and change you the next time. So you got to be careful. In a Guyanese context, nobody don't have to be too careful. You know that your ethnic vote ain't going anywhere. It is going nowhere. So you can do almost anything you want. And if now, because the PPP now is a minority too, so you want to back it up with some electoral manipulations. I'm going to say PPP because that they are in government, but maybe the PNC too, I don't know. You back it up with some electoral manipulation, and therefore you can be in power with, say, one seat. Now, if you're in one seat, even if you can win with one seat, you think that gives you the right to sit down and make policy for everybody? No, people, the UN and everybody has already stated the rights of minority. If you go anywhere, they'll be making constitutions or I think dealing with minorities. So this is not just majority rule, because your majority, there is no what John Stuart Mill call, there's no operational majority, in the sense that majorities change to get rid of government because people listen to different leaderships and all of that. And if you don't have that, you don't have a united public opinion. That's what he says. Mm-hmm. Ghana don't have any united public opinion. There's no united public. You got Indian public opinion, you got Black people public opinion, and that's it. So that's the problem. And the problem would only be dealt with, as we have been told since 70 years. Nobody is listening, hustling to win thing, and so on. Of course, the Cold War made a lot of difference there, because the Cold War meant that Chetty Jagan, you remember his letter he sent saying to the Soviet Comintern or whatsoever, promising to deliver Guyana and the Caribbean to the communist world. Well, that put paid to his notion of running Guyana. It certainly did. And You see, when we were not aware that that went on, a whole lot of sympathy went to and saying maybe the man wasn't, maybe he wasn't, but there it is in front of you, a letter from him to the Soviets, promising to deliver Guyana and them into the Soviet camp. It's there. Indeed, in my little piece last week, I said, the Cuban Missile Crisis started in 1962. 62, when they found out that the Soviet was trying to take missiles and what to Cuba. And by November 1962, Venezuela boarded this field. Yeah. That's how serious these people took that thing. Venezuela boarded. Even Chavez at Pegasus said that is the American start of that thing. And Jagan always saying that.
Yeah, yeah. And talking about Venezuela, 1962, the year of the Cuban Missile Crisis, Venezuela changed its mind about the 1899 at the UN. They had recognized it from 1899 up until 1962. And here we are 60 years later, and the Venezuelans have raised their voice again. What is impelling them this time?
Because since 1962, they made a big deal of it. Chavez said this year, he can't go back and say that in Venezuela. I mean, this is an important, it's part of the culture. Guyana belongs to them. So far as they're concerned, they have it on their map. They teach children in schools. The whole thing now has taken on a life of its own. But no political leader can just walk up and say it's not true. That's why indeed what they're doing, they're calling referendum. The referendum is already being decided because the people will vote that it belongs to them. So it's not just a situation of some political leader over there can say it's not ours anymore and survive. So that's what's going on here. You'll have to live with Venezuela, court case or no court case. In these, nobody pays too much mind. There is no world police in actual terms. There is no world police, and nobody pays actual mind to what court says, or unless it's in their interest. This same international court, they're given an opinion on what was the Chagos thing, the Chagos islands to Britain and the US. Did anybody pay attention? No, nobody paid the attention. Then they had to go and to the court. It wasn't the ICD, but they went to other court. But the point is, and still nobody paying any attention. China paying any attention to what's going on in the China Sea there and Singapore or somebody. Yeah, you think they're paying any attention?
Taiwan.
These things, that is not going away. Believe you me, that is not going away. The court can come up with say anything. They can give the most favorable decision for Guyana. It is not going to go away because you got a whole lot of people there no believe it. What you have to do is sit there and try to manage it, and try to manage it in a way that, and Venezuela is not going anywhere. It's not like you can move Venezuela or move Guyana. So the issue is not going to go away easy because that. So you have to try to manage it and try to live with it and manage it over time. The work.
And of course, with Guyana becoming this new petro state and with European interests, American interests, the Venezuelans obviously will see that as a provocation. And I'm adding to your thesis that there are more dimensions to this thing.
Oh, yeah. And in any case, Guyana is a petty petro state in terms of Venezuela. So in normal circumstances, you would have thought that they won't matter, because Venezuela has the biggest reserves in the world, they said. So effectively, They are doing that because they have to, in any case. You are saying we are going to auction something, and they start that, oh, there's our land. They never sit back and just not do anything. Or else they might, some opposition leader gonna say, see what they're doing, they're in cahoots, and then so they're gonna say something. And therefore they will say something. You have to understand quite clearly that this thing has to be managed, and managed sensibly for the rest of our lives. My life, your life, my thing for Africa, all lives, because that ain't going away. How you gonna get the Venezuelans to get up in the morning and say, this no longer ours?
You were once a minister of labor. You were also once a minister of education.
Yes.
So you're probably best placed to deal with this issue. The issue of the teachers and the government. The president met with some teachers, the head teachers. They seem to be pushing this issue of allowances in lieu of a raise in salary. First of all, is the opposition right that the president is engaging in union busting by meeting with the teachers and not meeting with the unions?
It's not, that's not why he's engaged in union busting, because he got a right to meet the teachers if he want to, but he got to have the formal negotiation for salaries with the unions. He has an agreement to do it. There's a process for doing so. If the trade unions and the government cannot agree on on the salary, the Ministry of Labor try to get in and do talk and thing, and then conciliation. At the end of the day, there's a way to stop all of this by arbitration. When I was the Minister of Labor, I introduced arbitration for the teachers, Father Rodriguez. People fret afterwards. Oh, you can do that. I said, the law allow me to do it. And because unlike the public service, where you got to have the parties agreeing to the arbitration, the law for the teachers at that time, at least, said that the minister can agree with the unions and they can do that. So I did it. And Father Rodriguez did a thing. So there's a way, and you have lots of rules and regulations that the government will not carry out. That's what I was just telling you about. The government is not doing these things. You can live in the courts, because the government has a right, a duty to follow the law and do all the things it has signed on to. But it has no interest in that. It has absolutely no interest. It is teachers and public servants now in thing. When I was there in around, what time was that? When I was 2004, 2003, public servants' wage in the world, now teachers' wage in the world was 3.4 times GDP average teacher salary in poor countries. This not in big countries, poor countries, 4.3. If you, at that time, I said, oh, you're getting that, or near to that. So that was all right. Remember that Jerry Jagan just thing, and the increases, the Armstrong increase, all of that. And teachers were getting 3.4 times. It was a world average.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't just pick it out my brain. This was a world average of the teacher salary. Average teacher salary now is about $120,000.
Yeah.
Right? A month. In real terms, it was 4.3%. No GDP, because most of that GDP gone to Exxon. GNI, call it, national income or so. It should have been nearly $500,000. And I'm going to tell you something. This has happened over time. my numbers as well might gone wrong. I'm saying, but I'm saying that do the GNI and refer it back to them. Give, and by the way, it is the same thing for poor countries. Although you might say Guyana is not poor, but it's the same thing now for poor countries. They average 3.4 times the GDP. The GDP, but we said don't worry the GDP. The teacher should be getting nearly $400,000 more.
Yeah, I spoke to a teacher last night. This is a trained teacher who's been teaching for more than 12 years. And that teacher said that she earns $139,000 before tax. And when after tax, she takes home $106,000.
Right.
I bowed my head because I'm trying to figure out how does that's 500 US dollars.
Yep.
How does that teacher exist?
But I'm telling you, the PVP idea about the pub, and the other thing, and when you talk about the PVP, you got to talk about the PNC. The PNC can't continue this nonsense when they were there for a couple of years, They continue it in other ways too. That they don't do it. They did not have collective bargaining with the unions too. They are promising them 5% so far as I can remember. They are promising whatever percent at the beginning of the year, but giving them at the end, like if it's the same thing.
Yeah.
They did all that. And you would have thought that, and remember, these are not unions antagonistic to them. Particularly, you would have thought that they would have, but it demonstrates another thing about the PNC. Some would say good, some would say bad. That they got caught in what the principle that was going on. If you understand, it wasn't because I don't think that they're going to want to deprive you, but they got caught in what the principle that what the PPP used to do, and Jordan and them just go along and do it, continue it because they were there. But if you looked at it seriously and did the work, you should have seen that the 100. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not saying they must get $400,000 or anything, but certainly you have to have a serious look, because the same thing happened in the public service. And these are Black people, African people, and for the most part, they're getting poorer. And that is the point you make. And they said they want evidence. But they're getting poorer.
Yeah.
And when they get poor, you leave countries and then you can't vote anymore.
That's right.
Or you got to join the PVP. It's something that happened, as said, in Fiji, where you are doing these subtle things to get rid of people. Look what happened to the Linden, the bauxite pension fund. Lincoln always crying about that.
Yeah.
You always crying. You got a bauxite pension fund, maybe the biggest amount of money owned by Africans in Guyana in the pension fund. And they said, boss, let's do some investment. Show us how we can do some investment and keep this fund together. And so on, and develop things more. This fund down the road can benefit children and all sort of things. They're the PPP answer. Oh, well, it's a democracy. Let's call, just like what they're trying to do now. Let's call all the pension people together and ask them if they want the money. What do you think they'll say? They want the money. And they give them the money, the pension fund gone. Why they don't call all Guyanese and ask them if they want the oil money? Why they don't say all of us? Let me decide where the Guyanese divide the money up among us and give us. Why? That pension fund could have been utilized to develop and do all sorts of things, but let's call them together. And people would say they want the money. they would take it. But I don't mean it's their leaders got of a broader vision. And the leaders are telling you, don't do that. Let's use it to get it done thing. You are saying, oh, the leaders might thief it. Of course, the leaders might thief it. Therefore, your government put in place operations that they can't. Or run it yourself if you think, but don't make that happen. Similar today, we are hearing from the General Secretary, Jack Dewar, that, the teachers, we give them a 100, no, not us. We give them 100 cars to give away, and there were corruption and this. Now he telling us that. He gave it to them. The government gave it to them. And he didn't sit there and see that it's properly managed. You come in now and tell us these people thief or all sort of corruption being there, and you didn't raise that at the time and try to solve it. This should have long been known to the public, and let's all solve it. You can't just now come after years and say, they're thief, and then it's like if you were nowhere around. If like you are nowhere around when the stealing was happening. But you allow the stealing to happen. And then now, if it happened, I don't know, because I'm certain the teachers going to come out and say, start saying the union. But you can't make that kind of excuse. You are the chief manager. The minute you have the first whiff of it, you should have jumped on it. Because you want the things to go, the duty free to go to the people who you agree upon, not to some all sort of people. And if you leave any business without an auditor or oversight, people go with it.
Yeah.
But you think you always have to have some sort of auditor or something, any business. So you can't come now and tell us that and think that is a point you are making.
Talking about auditors, we had the auditors showing $214 million scam by and that's my term, by Exxon. And then all of a sudden it went down to $3 million. And some low-level person or mid-level person in the ministry apparently took it upon himself to call Exxon and say, let's whittle this thing down if you follow what the government is saying. Talk to us about what's happening there.
We're going to talk to you about which middle-level person can move 214 down to 3 and nobody knows. I mean, that can be a ridiculous statement. But I mean, yes, a lot of middle-level persons all through the times get thrown under the bus. But the truth is that this is a serious matter. And you can't solve that by yourself. Again, I gone back to this because nobody in this country, Indian black people, nobody believed that is what happened. Everybody know this chap was thrown under the bus. I mean, they know that. But how many votes you think the PPP lose? None. Because there's a nature of the system, and until you change the system, you can write and talk every day about accountability and all of that. You ain't got any serious accountability. And in any case, if you change the PPP by the PNC getting one more vote or something, the Indians can start on you. Are we there in the same voodoo? So you have to try and sit down and devise a system that's going to make all of this worthwhile. We have oil in a time when every Guyanese child and every Guyanese period should have said, we're going to live reasonable now. You know what's happening? Because these two parties are fighting about who win elections and trying to get people to vote for them and get people in the country who vote for them. They are trying to bring more people in the country.
Yeah.
They are trying to share this with more just because they want to get. They're destroying essentially destroying our heritage. We're Guyanese. Maybe we can extend this route. You depend if you live in the Middle East, you have different categories of extension, but you can extend it certainly to a diaspora in places. And our Caribbean brothers, we can do that. But you can't have willy-nilly trying to win election, and next thing we gotta bring these amount, we gotta bring these amount. Like if it doesn't matter in talk, well, maybe it doesn't when you think about it. God ain't giving you anything in.
Yeah.
You know, you should sit down like the Arabs have done and work out a process that your people, your native people, live relatively well. Well, nobody's doing that. And I'm not just saying this to the PVP, the PNC was there too, you know, all side of things, crazy things. They just remove the education grant without recognizing. But Jamaica got education grant. Brazil got one of the biggest. Mexico, I think, who started it. Without recognizing, you need your children to go to school. And the parents want the grant, yes, but you can't give them like the PP give them any old time so they can go and spend it out. You are saying that to get this grant, you better show that these children went to school. You got to show, but Jamaica got this, let's call it in Brazil, balls or something. You got to show that these people went to school. You just got, it makes no sense to just take away the PVP. Don't care who really get the grant and who don't. It's part of a political thing to us and get people to vote for them. But certainly, and African people got more sort of delinquency in school than Indian people. And you would have thought that a government like the thing would have said, nobody, we not taking away the grant. We must do it like other. The proven way to do this. This is not Henry Jeffrey, and it's a proven way. There, you talk about saying let's have some kind of universal basic income area party. Oh, they never go to work. Where you here? And they signed to it to the United Nations development goals. Said you should put a bed, you should put a ceiling there that nobody should fall below. You signed it, and then you hear them. They didn't go to work. People don't want work. You're giving some people the money just to stay alive, and they're not going to go to work. Everybody wants fancy car like you. The money you're giving them might barely keep them going. And indeed, if there's your concern, you could have put other things in place to see that they go to work.
That's right.
And get it. I mean, but it is wildness, this craziness that's happening. So, David, you are the politician, you know. You got to work. You work.
So we a few years ago, Mrs. Jagan came out against the PPP's decision to take away ads from Stabrook News, and Jack Dio told her that she's a private citizen. And recently, former President Ramatar said he would have renegotiated the oil contract, and President Irfan Ali took a dig at him. Much ado about nothing?
Much ado about absolutely nothing. What do you think that means? It makes maybe nice public reading, but it's much ado about nothing. Indeed, that time that they took things from Stabrook News was the Bank of the Guyana. They take ads from Stabrook News, and who told us the Garali to do that? Oh, come on. Anyway, I'm saying those things are nice things. People like read about that, and because it makes them. But these things don't. Again, I go back. You can't hold a government accountable if there is no way that you can affect their voting base. There is no united public opinion in Guyana. to make any government change. It is in England because it's 90% almost, 80% homogeneous society. These people change, they got big swing votes. You ain't got nothing like that. Once the people, well, I must even say that. I was about to say, even once the PP and the PNC exist, you ain't gonna get no swing vote. But it's not the PPP and the PNC in themselves, it's the nature of the ethnic divide. Because I got a nasty feeling, if the PPP get less aggressive, other people are going to come on board. We saw that on the Dragon, a whole lot of little party didn't come in, not they come to UF, Tennessee, all the Ravi, Dev, all them say, oh, but he's not seeing where he's going and all.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it didn't affect the PPP's vote.
Nope.
Henry Jeffrey, short of an agreement on shared governance, what happens?
I am saying that I don't know, but I don't know that you'll have any agreements on shared governance. But I think there are medians that you can do, but they will call for constitutional reform. I hear nonsense in the press where Guyana has the most inclusive thing in the country. In the Caribbean. I said this, wait, and this is the people that tell you they got PhD and all sort of foolishness.
Yes.
Guyana, how can we have the votes when the government don't talk even to the opposition? The government almost closed down the Public Accounts Committee. These things are majoritarian commissions. Anything time you go there and they vote against it, you can say what you like. They can sit down there and sleep. But all you gotta say is, yeah, time to vote, vote. That is inclusive. Great. You set up the people who made the constitutional framers of the 2000 framers made. They did what they understood. That's all I can say. What they did not quite understand, and Desmond Hyde himself. Because it's after that he coming out and say, I want shared government.
Yeah.
Because he start realizing it's a majoritarian system he set up. The whole thing was majoritarian. It's only that you got plenty more committees. But if you got plenty more committees that can express the same ethnic views, what good is that? What good? And to tell me that there is the mood thing. All the Caribbean countries are essentially homogeneous. They don't have a ethnic thing. You got some Trinidad, but you have to have things that can make the government budge. And if they ain't budge by you, you got to have a public opinion that will shift them. Neither existing in any sensible way. Plus now you got people doing things to manipulate elections. Now they're below the thing, below the 50% mark. Now they want large scale manipulation of elections.
And you know, we're talking about the voters list. We're talking about the need for biometrics, and those are long-standing problems. But even as we are talking about those things, the PPP may be thinking that they will have to compromise on something, but they're trying to pick up votes in other places.
Yeah, and let me tell you the point. Sorry, I missed the point you made. The thing you asked me. First of all, you can have veto powers on certain things. The trade unions said it. Nigel Hughes mentioned it. You can have veto powers. Now, saying no, but Aubrey said it. You remember Aubrey said it 2 years, about a year ago, that any large project and so on. I don't know about any large project, but I'm just saying that you cannot say any large project speak to the opposition we must have consensus on it. And therefore you can have rules that says that we must have consensus on things. We must have consensus before you can move forward with them. It's as simple as that. And the trade unions, TUC,
The
saying that the
TUC,
budget,
yes.
yeah, your budget mustn't be able to be passed. So effectively, you need serious constitution reform to stop any government from unilateral, not the PPP alone, any government from unilateral behaving that they can behave now in a Westminster type situation.
Dr. Henry Jeffrey here weighing in and making the point that he always makes. Will these things cause the PPP any votes? And that is an important factor in terms of checking any government. And we have to begin to think along new lines. I made that point last night, that no one party can effectively run Guyana. No one race can effectively run Guyana. And we have to begin to think about seriously a government of national unity. I think in the short run, the PPP is an obstacle to that, but we have to push them to the point where they can no longer be an obstacle to shared governance. And because it's the only way we can solve all the other problems. But if we don't take care of poverty and we don't take care of the race problem, we're not going anywhere. Dr. Jeffrey, always a pleasure.
Same here. Thank you very much, David. And thank
Dr. Henry Jeffrey there, always frank, always frank. He doesn't hold back, and he makes the point. Sometimes if you are supporting the opposition, you might be a little bit uncomfortable with the fact that, he calls out the PNC when they were in office, but that's the reality. Hopefully we learn. Hopefully we learn going forward. I said it last night, I'm saying it again. The PPP is the obstacle to a government of national unity. We got to move them electorally first. And that once a coalition government gets back into office, it has to begin to use that power at its disposal to do a couple of things to change the political architecture so that after an election, no ethnic group is left out of the loop. That's our challenge. Our challenge is to win an election, but also to change the system. It's quite a challenge. But if we look at what's happening there in the Middle East with the Israelis and the Palestinians, do we want to get to that point in Guyana? Because it's the same ethnic issue that they're fighting there. The same ethnic issue we're fighting here. So I want you all to ponder, to think, we've got to win the next election. But we also have to change this system that keeps you out if you quote unquote lose. All those Venezuelans that are coming in, you open the newspaper this morning, 70 people in one house on the west coast, Zeeburg, 70 Venezuelans. The government has the resources to go and appropriate those Venezuelans. It's easy now to get an ID card, to get a birth certificate. So while we are trying to get biometrics, and on the one hand there, and the PPP may be thinking that they may have to give in to some form of biometrics, they're trying to get votes in other places. The PPP has already started to rig the elections. So we have an uphill battle to win the elections, and we have to, because they're not going to agree to a government of national unity before the elections. And we've got to up our case to the Americans. I would prefer the Americans stay out of our business, but they're already in our business, big time. They installed the present government. They put sanctions on the other side. If you sanction one side in a two-man race, then you're giving the election to the unsanctioned side. So the Americans, for all intents and purposes, are responsible, partly responsible, largely responsible. And we must have no shame of continuing to make our case to them that you committed an error. And your error means that half the population is thrown under the bus. And to prevent that bus from crushing us, there has to be a negotiated settlement. There has to be a negotiated settlement. We have invited the Black Caucus to send a fact-finding mission. And we want you all to support it. Let the Black Caucus come and see for themselves. Come and go, talk to people in Linden, talk to people in Mocha, talk to people in West Berbice, talk to people in Georgetown, talk to people in Hillfoot. Come, don't take our word for it. Come. That is not interference in our affairs. You're coming here to set things right. Once the election was disputed in 2020, I argued that we should have a joint government and let that joint government oversee the reform of GCOM and put constitutional reform in place. It was a disputed election. So don't install one, install both. Vincent Alexander agreed with that, but we couldn't get the active members of the PNC to agree with it. If the PNC had demanded and said, look, this election is being stolen from us, and the least we're asking for is half of the government. That was a big error. In the end, the PNC had to surrender all of the government rather than making a demand for half once you realized this thing was being taken away from you. That was my proposal. The PNC and maybe a large section of the Indian population are angry at me since then. They said I said to block up the boxes. I was saying we know when we open the boxes what we will see in there. They said David Hinds was against democracy. He wanted to block up the boxes. Well, they did open the boxes. And when they opened the boxes, to this day, the PPP don't want to admit what was in what they saw in the boxes. They didn't have to open the boxes to convince me that is Robin vote there in the boxes. I knew that. And that is why I said, set up a government of national unity, give it 3 years. I said, since Granger was already there as the president, let him continue, give the PPP the vice president, split up the cabinet, and give that government the mandate of cleaning up our electoral system. The Americans thought otherwise, CARICOM thought otherwise, the Europeans thought otherwise, and they think the way you thought the thing is to give one side the government. And here we are 3 years later. That government is behaving like an autocrat. is behaving like a monarchy. That is what happens when you install governments in disputed elections. It's a form of regime change. If the PPP say they see attempt robbing at Ashmin, but then the coalition said, we see attempt robbing in the boxes when we open it. That sounds to me like a dispute. We cannot afford to go through that in 2025. In 2020, we got away with a lot. The PPP got away with a lot. In 2025, I don't think our country can fetch another burden like that. And the PPP is busy rigging 1,000 vote there, rigging at 200 there, bringing in Venezuelans, bringing in this, bringing in that, changing the birth certificate laws. And they are doing it within the confine of the law. So we have got to begin to think, those of us on the opposition side. First of all, please support the fact-finding mission from the Black Caucus coming here. And let us begin to think about winning the next election, not to take revenge on the supporters of the PPP, but using that election to correct the wrongs, using a new government to correct the wrongs, so that never again we have to deal with this. As you all know, I don't have time with crossover votes. I just think it's a short-term band-aid to a gushing wound. How much crossover vote do you think we can get? We may get crossover vote and we win the election by 1 seat, as we did the last time. And even with that crossover vote, we couldn't survive in government because the PPP start to try to overthrow the government from day one. And they were able to use one man in our government. One man. To bring down that government. When you win by 1 seat, one man or one woman can bring your government down. My philosophy is try to win. Always try to win an election. But ensure that win or lose, your people are not left out in the pasture. Look at all them big money in contract. Brother Ganesh, is doing some work in exposing these contracts. But look at the litany of woes that our country has had to go through in the last 3 years. And who holds the worst of it? Black people. Yes, all poor people. All poor people are getting shafted. But black poor people and black people in general are getting shafted because they are not the natural supporters of the oligarchs. It's not like you got 20 big contractors 8 is Indians, 8 Africans, and 4 Amerindians, so that when they get a big contract, the money leaking down, trickling down to their communities. Look who getting the big contracts. And they're able to decide who get the contract because they have the power to do that. And it's not like this government got shame that when they get catch, they're going to say, oh, beg your pardon, I won't do it again. They have no shame. They feel it's their right to do it. And as much as they accuse us of wanting violence in the country, but we've had no violence from our side. The violence has come from the side of the government. That's where the violence has come from. We are still committed to peaceful change, democratic change, institutional change. But how long will our supporters sit back, take blows, while we are committed to working within a system that put us outside of the gate? Dr. Martin Luther King used to say, he's not a fire extinguisher. That when white Americans cause the fire, they call on him to go in and out the fire. We are not fire extinguishers on the opposition side. Because we are constantly having to talk our people out of dreadness. Big task in front of us. And we're going to continue to use this program, and hopefully my brothers and sisters on all the other programs will use their programs to educate our people, to give our people hope, but to talk sense in our heads. Ultimately, an election is a gamble. It's a necessary gamble because you can't run a country without elections. But when an election is finished, when one side is shut out and one side is shut in, then it's the roll of the dice. It's a gamble, but it's a necessary gamble. But it's a gamble nevertheless. And how long will we continue to gamble our supporters' rights every 5 years? When we lose, they lose, and they got to suffer. We got to start thinking common sense. We want to win an election, but we also want to win the right of our people, whether their party loses an election or not, their right to live as human beings in their own country. That's where our heads must be. Tomorrow night I come back to continue this discussion.